through these 4 objectives. So what did OMB want to accomplish with this specific series of changes that are going to take effect on October 1st? First is alignment. So as you know, there's a lot of different statutory requirements, administrative priorities, all these different types of things. And sometimes they're not always consistent in how the information is shared in the document. So it's really important to think about the structural changes and all of the things that OMB is trying to do to streamline. You know, for instance, there's different parts to 2 CFR. So UEI and SAM.gov is part 25. And then there's another section that's reporting on awardee and subawardee compensation, which is part 170. And then you have the award terms for trafficking in persons 175. So it's just, how do we kind of streamline these so that they're all consistent? So that's just an example, but it just shows that it gets a little sticky when things are not the same across different documents. And so there can be left some ambiguity. Reducing burdens. Yes, we all love it when we have things that are off our plate. So all love it when things are more streamlined, when things are easier on us, especially with a lot of new recipients and subrecipients getting into the mix with a lot of the pandemic related funding. So one of the things that OMB really wanted to do was to try to ease some of those administrative burdens. Well, one of the things is to think about these capitalization thresholds related to supplies and equipment. So those have increased, as well as the single audit threshold. And another thing for reducing burdens is the actual text. How many of you have looked at a notice of funding opportunity and said, wow, this is going to be easy to read? And we're going to get to some of that. And one of the things they're trying to do is streamline the actual template for that NOFO so that it's consistent across federal agencies. So one of the burdens that and can be a barrier to entry for a lot of different recipients is the fact that it's really difficult to ascertain what they're supposed to do pre-award, post-award. And so one of the things that they want to do is take this language and try to have some consistency. And I think that that's a way to try to alleviate some of the stress, some of the challenges that come with trying to apply for these different funding opportunities. So although the federal agencies need to have a plan for how they're going to implement it, and it's probably not going to seamlessly look the same across agencies, it is an attempt to, again, try to reduce burdens on behalf of those who are actually using these federal funds. Here's another objective: clarification. So as I'm sure you're aware, if you've looked at the Code of Federal Regulations or a lot of different federal statutory documents, that there's some kind of ambiguity and there's some lack of clarification. So while some of these changes aren't necessarily, going to have any policy impact, it is important for there to be some kind of way to reduce inconsistencies with regard to definitions, descriptions, and also that there is alignment between the federal agencies and OMB. And that's very, very critical, because sometimes there is that lack of clarification can lead to impacts during single audits or actual completion of the application. So there's a way to try to kind of close these loopholes so that there isn't some sort of lack of or misinterpretation in how the guidance is sharing and dispensing information. Now, this next one is one of my favorites. I really love plain language because, I'm married to an attorney and I read a lot of legal documents, and I'm sure you have as well. If you've read any contract, sometimes it can be really difficult to get through. So the use of plain language and having additional clarity is really the final objective for these recent series of changes. So what exactly does that mean? One is improving the flow between sections so that there's a little bit more seamlessness. Also ensuring that there's consistency with the use of terms. Now, I'm going to specifically highlight non-federal entity, recipient, and subrecipient, because in some instances throughout the guidance, there's a reference to non-federal entity. Well, then if you're a subrecipient, does that apply to you? Or does it apply to a recipient? So that there's clarity about what type of non-federal entity. So there's just a means to try to have people understand, what they're responsible for. Is it the recipient's responsibility? Is it the subrecipient's responsibility? And, those words have to be clear. Also jargon. We are a world where we use a lot of acronyms, especially in the federal government. And there's a lot of kind of words that, maybe if you are newer to grant compliance, you're new to understanding 2 CFR 200, you might not fully be aware or appreciate, some of the terms. And so it's a way to try to avoid some of that. And again, this goes along with the text of the notice of funding opportunities, trying to maintain consistency, but also just using plain language principles and being concise. If any of you have taken a course where you have to write, for someone in grade school, it's just trying to be as clear as possible and to also be as try to not use as much of the language that can confuse people and trying to be concise in that language.